There's value in when you're first growing the thing, being the face, doing all of the things. But as you mature, it's the very thing that's going to hurt you.
Too many business owners build companies that can't thrive without them, creating stress, limiting growth, and putting their legacy at risk. But what if your business became one of your greatest assets instead of your greatest dependency? Today, I'm joined by Gwen Taniguchi, partner at Peak Advisory Group and certified exit planning advisor who helps founders create scalable, transferable businesses with stronger systems, smarter operations, and lasting value. If you're ready to build a business that serves your life, not the other way around, you won't want to miss this conversation. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Let's dive into the show. Well, I want to take a moment and welcome Gwen Taniguchi, partner at Peak Advisory Group and fellow certified exit planning advisor, or CEPA as we call ourselves. So welcome to the show, Gwen.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And before we jump into what you're doing today as a partner at Peak Advisory Group and what you're doing in your work as a certified exit planning advisor, can you share with our audience, our listeners a little bit about who you are and your background leading up to that point?
I ran my own fractional COO firm for about 10 years. And I kind of fell into operations. I feel like I'm naturally good at puzzles and pattern recognition. And so, I just started applying that to jobs I was in and slowly moved up, the chain and seeing all of the businesses that I was in over the last 10 years of running my own firm. It really helped me just untangle operations naturally, the people, workflows, process, all of the things. And it was just sort of a natural progression. My partner is actually a client of mine who we grew her business to the point of she needed somebody full time. She didn't want to hire somebody outside of me, so decided to make me partner. And here I am.
There you go. I mean, is there anything going back to even earlier on that, moved you to this area of specializing in the operational side of business exits?
So I worked for a heavy machinery tooling company back in the day.
Okay.
And I was getting groomed to take over the vice president's position. So I got to really kind of see under the hood of how this mid-sized business worked. And I started to recognize problems that at the time, I really didn't have the skill set to put, this is like a workflow problem or this is an inventory problem. I was just sort of developing that, late 20s. And that was really, I guess, the lever in my professional career of, I really like to dissect areas to make businesses more efficient. And I helped make that business a lot of money by cutting costs, improving ordering of inventory, because it was obviously very inventory heavy. And that's where my curiosity really got piqued. And when I first went out on my own, it wasn't actually operations. It was just, let me help with admin stuff. I didn't really know, when you start a business, it's is anybody going to pay me for this? I was young. And I slowly was there's a real need for kind of getting under the hood, sort of a speak. I mean, my father is a mechanic. I guess a lot of that kind of my natural curiosity for how things work and how to make it better, how to make it more high performance, I guess kind of comes from that. So yeah, and I like I said, it just kind of naturally with pattern recognition, seeing things and really poking truth from multiple angles. And it really satisfied that problem solving puzzle thing that I love.
So how did you move from kind of the operational side of the business, which not move may not be the right word, but I guess, also add in the exiting side of the business? How did that come into play for you?
What's funny about that is I wrote about this while I was going through CEPA. A lot of what is taught in the CEPA community is all things that I actually had been talking about and believing. I've always talked about having a transferable business and a business that doesn't depend on the founder. So I've always had the mindset of a business should run without the person being in the driving seat all the time. And I really wanted to understand. So we do a lot at the firm with valuations, due diligence, quality of earnings. And what's funny, and bookkeeping and all of the financial side, being in conversations, I really started to see like, okay, but this is an operations problem. We're just seeing it over here. If we address this piece of, let's say, like client retention or workflow of some sort, that would solve a lot of these problems that you're running into on the valuation side, on the due diligence side. So again, that kind of like, let me see how this works. I began to get curious about if we started to take an operational, like approach the operations to start to really like earlier in the process, how does that affect everything else? Obviously, we know it affects everything else, but like, how can I start to create value earlier so that when you get to the valuation process, you have a higher multiple?
Right.
Like you're actually able to walk away from it cleanly and not have like some earnout that some people like it. Some people just want to be done with it, which I would want to be done with it personally. It's like you get to the point of wanting to sell, you just want to wrap it up.
Right.
So honestly, again, that was just kind of one of those natural progressions of me being like, okay, well, how does this work? I see it working here and getting the business to be more profitable and run smoother. Honestly, we all want optionality, right? Whether that's getting out of the business with a sale or getting out with hiring management, bringing in family, whatever that is. The ultimate goal is to not always be the one running the show, or at least it should be.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So, one of the things we like to do on the Mitlin Money Mindset is give real tangible takeaways. So, for the business owner listening today who wants to increase the value of their business, let's say over the next 3 years, what's the one change they should start making this week in order to start down the path of doing that?
Honestly, start reducing one dependency. And this may sound silly, but irritation is a huge signal for me. What's the thing that irritates you in a meeting? So maybe it's the client that you're constantly griping about. Maybe it's an employee. Maybe it's this one hang up in delivery. I really think that if you wanted to start building value, you need to start reducing dependency. And it's really easy to kind of like take a step back and go, okay, where am I still getting hung up in the process? What's making me uncomfortable about this? The hardest thing is clients and team. And I would start really examining those aspects, but reduce the dependency hands down to start to kind of untangle as a founder, untangle yourself out of the day to day, or even just taking stock to see like where is the team getting hung up? What are the same things that are recirculating in meetings? Or what's that one objective that we just can't seem to like get past? Quarter after quarter, it keeps getting pushed back. Those are signals to start to look at those things. And again, irritation. Where are you irritated?
When you say dependency, you're meaning you want to start removing things that are dependent upon the owner and
Correct.
have somebody else take ownership to free up the owner's time so they could be more laser focused on the bigger picture, the growth, et cetera, the areas that are most important to them.
Correct. Anything that still runs through the founder in any way, an approval, new client onboarding, approval of marketing content, approval of contracts. These are just kind of high level things, but anything that the founder gets is still involved with that you pay somebody else to do they're doing part of the job already, but that one kind of like final thing keeps running through the founder.
Right.
Start removing those things.
And I guess ideally you really just want to get the founder down to whatever is the best use of their time and eliminate everything else for the most part.
Absolutely. I mean, the best place for a founder is typically visionary, business development, beginning to like think high level and really as a founder and not like the CEO and the nitty gritty and being so involved in the day-to-day operational rhythm of things.
Yeah. I agree. You know, why is it so important for people to think about what would happen if you disappeared tomorrow, right? Meaning I'm a founder. What happens if something happens to me? And I guess this goes back to those dependencies, right? The less things that are dependent upon you, the better that is for the business, better for valuation. But, maybe there's more to it. Why isn't it so important for founders to think that way about what would happen if I wasn't here tomorrow?
Well, I think it's a pretty nuanced question, but most of the businesses that I've been in have employees, right? And it's one of our biggest assets. Some people might argue with that, it's a huge risk as well, having a business. But I actually think it's a huge disservice to not think about it if you're what happens if I'm not here? You have other people's livelihoods that are on the line.
Right.
The personal aspect of it, that's a huge responsibility being a business owner and understanding that there's families that are dependent on the income. And if you're not there tomorrow and you don't have these things in place to allow the business to run without you being in it, other people's lives are on the line. If you're not considering, does payroll get met without me being here? Are we able to bring on clients without me being here? What happens to marketing? What happens to production? I think that the ripple effect on the community side of things is actually, for me, like the most impactful in thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked a lot about like the community reliance upon employees and your team. Also, the people that you serve, whatever type of business you're in, they need that stuff. But also, right, I think a lot of times founders think being irreplaceable is good, which clearly it's not necessarily good based upon those things you just mentioned. You talked about the people side and having that continuity, but also from the financial side, it's good for business, right? That's
absolutely.
So what does that look like for a founder by having a transferable business from a financial aspect of things?
If you go to get a valuation and we see that everything is kind of dependent on our due diligence, through like a due diligence process, and everything, the relationships are only tied to the founder. Client attraction, onboarding is only done through the founder. You're getting dinged for that. The value of your company goes down. So it's like, yes, there's value in when you're first growing the thing, being the face, doing all of the things, you're growing it. Indispensable is kind of just like a natural cause and effect when you're initially growing it. But as you mature, it's the very thing that's going to hurt you in having it be worth something to somebody else. Because if you're selling the company, you're not coming along with it, at least long term. And nobody's buying a business that kind of goes out the door with the founder. If you're the bottleneck every kind of through every department, it's not worth anything. So it definitely, taking even like the growth of the company, it stalls you out as well.
Right.
There's only so much you're capable of taking on your plate. If you're handling every single department or every single department still running through the founder, you can't move fast, and you're definitely not going to move efficiently or cleanly. So as far as exit value, you're getting dinged if everything's still running through you. So it's only in the benefit of the business and the founder to begin to remove themselves and empower the team and create processes that aren't just dependent on any one person. It's not just the founder. It's key employees as well. It's creating a rhythm for the business that can run regardless of who's sitting in that seat.
Yeah. And it sounds like by doing that, you're helping really the business while you're around and growing and being able to thrive, and and then just as important, or maybe even more importantly, depending upon what your goals are, is the exit strategy is seeing some significant benefits because you've addressed those. Let's pause for a moment. What actually brings you joy? It's something most people never think about, yet it shapes how your life unfolds. You're busy. You make responsible choices. You even plan ahead. But have you slowed down long enough to ask if what you're building supports a life you enjoy living? That's the reason I built my YouTube channel, to help you bring more joy to your money journey. Sure, we'll talk about all the essentials, but my real goal is to help you connect your finances with what brings you joy, because money is the tool that funds the moments that matter. If you want to explore that connection more deeply, visit my YouTube channel at Larry Sprung. You call yourself the secret weapon behind founders. So what have you seen founders repeatedly misjudge about themselves, and how do you act as this secret weapon? What does that mean?
I think a lot of founders misjudge how involved they actually are. Because it's actually, and it's so simple, but it really is in the subtleties. It's in the hesitations that the team feels like empowered to just go ahead and sign that contract, to start a new initiative where they know, or to like even improve a process. It's amazing how especially like Main Street businesses, or like lower middle market, you could have like really capable, competent team members. And there's still that, well, what do you think about this? Can I get your feedback here? Or I need to pick your brain for a couple minutes. And none of those things are inherently like bad or wrong. It's great. But those are the ways that the founder still like stays involved. And I'm able to pick up on those things pretty quick. Again, I know I've said this, like irritation is a signal, and sometimes it's really subtle. So when you're doing like founder interviews, team interviews, to just kind of see how things are, where they see it getting hung up. And you could just like really subtly see the irritation or an annoyance. And it's like, okay, there it is. I see it. We're poking here. It's not typically the most obvious thing, but it is, like I said, it's the nuance. I think that goes back to pattern recognition. And I've been able to address it. I have a soft spot for team, and I can see where a team is kind of being like, they have the brakes being pressed on their autonomy to be able to just like go. Mm-hmm. And so lovingly addressing it like directly though.
Yeah. Sounds like you're the irritation whisperer. That might be your secret weapon. I don't know. But
that's what it is. Irritation sounds like such a negative thing, and it's not. But there's little subtleties that come up in conversations with founders and with team where it's just kind of like, it's like putting a spotlight. Okay, we've accepted this. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, you need to look there, because that's where either frustration with the team is going to end up losing a good employee, or you're losing the ability to move as fast and as profitable as you can.
Yeah. I think, going back to many, many years ago when the book, The E-Myth, came out, ever since then, the concept of working on the business instead of in the business has been talked about so much. And there's so much truth to that statement, but at many times, business owners aren't doing that. So what do you see, as somebody who's working with business owners all the time, as the biggest mistake that business owners make because they're so busy working in the business that they never stop to work on it?
It's funny. So many people confuse like activity with progress. I'm even guilty of that myself. I'm so busy. Okay, well, what did you do?
Right.
Besides spin your wheels or doing like client delivery work. But it's easy to get stuck on that. I think that the biggest mistake is like I said, I work with a lot of like lower middle market and really specifically like professional service firms. I think the biggest mistake that they make in particular is not doing business development activities, is kind of like putting the brakes on their own marketing, visibility, getting out there and talking to the community and networking. I think that piece, because professional service firms or like lower middle market, it tends to be a lot of word of mouth, referrals, and longtime clients, right? And I think that the business development is the easiest thing to get pushed to the back burner, outside of removing yourself, of course, and kind
Right.
of, but like, I really feel like it's stopping the business development because they've gotten comfortable and they're
Yeah.
busy, right? I'm busy. I have clients, so I can kind of hit the brakes a little bit on like the business development side of things. And I think that's a huge disservice to the growth of a business.
Yeah. And I think to your point, you really want to start eliminating those things that are keeping you busy and focusing on the stuff that would allow you to do the business development and
Absolutely.
think about the business is where you're going, right?
And also like setting goals, having those, okay, well, like what's the 5-year goal? Break that down into what does that look like for yearly goals? What's that for quarterly goals? I'm huge on setting quarterly objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really easy to push those aside because I'm busy. Like I'm guilty of that. I don't have my Q3 objectives. I'm working on them currently, but they're not laid out the way I normally would. I think those are really important to kind of lay out for yourself to just keep you moving. It's a business development activity, but it keeps you moving, on a growth trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah. You've looked into a lot of businesses, inside a lot of businesses. What's one red flag that tells you within the first hour that you're looking at a company that the company may be not as healthy as the owner believes it is? Are there some red flags that like you see instantly?
Yes, it is. Well, it depends.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask a question, it's literally that answer. Well, it depends. Everything cannot be a gray area. We have to have more black and white. And you can't ask Susan. It can't always be ask Susan. It can't, or Karen or Bob or whatever, when I start hearing that, when I'm asking questions, well, it depends on, this client has been here for so long. So we do things this way for this client, and this client, I already know that they pay, it says net 45, but they always pay within like 50 to 57 days. You start to see these, like everything is an exception.
Right.
And you pick up on that in every aspect of the business operationally. And that affects the financials.
Big problem. Yeah.
It's a huge problem. And it's funny how like so subtle, but it shows itself basically immediately.
Yeah.
So it's the well depends. Well, it depends.
Yeah. You don't want to do business one way that has 1,000 exceptions to go along with it because it's unmanageable.
No, because that's not repeatable. How do you ever scale that? And that totally is dependent on like tribal knowledge, that inherent, Susan teaches Jenny and where it just kind of gets passed down and there's all these like shortcuts and none of it's documented anywhere.
Right.
I can't tell you how many businesses I've gone into with all of the exceptions, living in every department, but it's not documented anywhere either. So how is anybody supposed to know? It kind of goes back to that. If the head of this department is to just like leave tomorrow, then what happens?
Yeah. Nobody's going to even know who should be an exception and who shouldn't, or how they even do business.
And then you're going to end up affecting client relationships as well. I saw that a lot. And I actually saw that a lot with the tooling company I was with. Well, we don't call that customer because we know that they pay, they're always late. So we don't do collections on that customer. It's like, okay, well, now I've just upset the customer because I've called, how do I know that? Am I damaging the relationship? It's really like a dangerous and insidious thing, those kind of like gray areas.
You need to have those processes drawn up and followed for sure to make things easy. After spending years working behind the scenes with successful entrepreneurs, what's the most surprising thing you've learned about leadership?
I think that good leaders don't pretend to have all the answers. It's about creating like an environment where good decisions happen without them. They empower their team. They build structure around them that allows them to be a resource, but they don't pretend to have it all figured out and not everything needs to run by them. I feel like even as a leader myself, I've really grown into that. I used to want to have all of the answers. Like I wanted to be the person that everybody came to. And as I've matured in my own leadership, I'm like, I don't do this anymore. Like, I don't know how to work through this entire process in the most efficient way. I have these guidelines, like this workflow. We have this person doing it. You really should talk to them because we've taken the right steps to hire competent people to document processes. So I really think it's like not good leadership is not always like trying to be the one to know everything, but also being resourceful enough and empowering enough to bring in people around you that do.
Yeah, I think that's so vitally important to being a good leader is, I call it being the librarian and not being the library. You don't have to be the library where you know everything. You want to be the librarian, know where to get what you need to help or pursue or do whatever you're doing. So that's super, super important. I really appreciate the time today, Gwen, and we end each of our shows by asking our guests the same final question. We are the Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy. And the question is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Honestly, I start every day with prayer and I listen to scripture every single morning. And that brings me so much joy. It kind of puts things into perspective and helps me to remember what's really important. And that brings me tons of joy.
Amazing. Amazing. Now, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes for the listeners. But if people want to learn more about what you do, want to connect with you, learn more about the advisory practice you have that you're a partner in at Peak Advisory Group, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Go to peakadvisory.com, and that's Peak, P-E-K, like peekaboo.
Very easy. So, and we'll have all that information in the show notes. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share with our listeners this great knowledge. A lot of great takeaways for today for business owners on their focus and how they should be approaching business, in terms of growth and exiting the business. So thank you for that and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
What a powerful reminder from Gwen Taniguchi that strongest businesses aren't built around one person. They're built to create freedom, opportunity, and lasting impact. Whether you're an entrepreneur preparing for an eventual exit or simply looking to build a healthier, more valuable business, I hope today's conversation inspires you to start making intentional changes today. Until next time, keep finding joy in your journey. Keep building your future with purpose, and remember to ask yourself, what did you do today that brought you joy? Gwen Taniguchi and all she's up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find her can be found in the show notes.